Hiring a new maid brings back haunting memories, as the millionaire realizes she is someone he once loved. Their reunion sparks emotions and dilemmas that he thought were long buried. And if you cherish your family and love stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and avoid 10 years of bad luck. The morning sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows of Ryan Williams's Upper East Side penthouse, illuminating an expansive living room filled with designer furniture and expensive art pieces. At 35, Ryan had everything money could buy, yet he stood at his window, coffee in hand, watching the city below with detachment. The room's emptiness echoed his own isolation. His morning routine never varied. Wake up at 5 a.m., work out in his private gym, shower, and prepare for another day of managing his technology empire. The cleaning staff moved silently around him, trained to be invisible. Their presence only emphasized his solitude. Ryan checked his watch, another charity gala tonight. These events had become a blur of fake smiles and shallow conversations. Last week's newspaper had named him one of New York's most eligible bachelors, but the thought made him grimace. The women who pursued him were predictable, society daughters and ambitious socialites, all fitting perfectly into his world, but lacking something he couldn't name. His assistant's resignation last week had thrown his schedule into chaos. The temporary replacement wasn't working out, mixing up appointments and mishandling important calls. Ryan needed someone competent, someone who could manage both his business and personal life with discretion. The interviews that morning had been disappointing. 5 candidates, all with impressive resumes, but lacking the right qualities. Too eager to please. Too focused on the prestige of working for him rather than the job itself. Ryan rubbed his temples, dreading the next round of interviews. The final candidate arrived exactly on time. Ryan barely glanced at her resume before the interview began. Her presence was different, calm, professional, without the nervous energy of the previous candidates. She answered his questions directly, showing genuine interest in the work rather than the lifestyle it might afford her. I believe efficiency comes from understanding not just what needs to be done, but why it needs to be done, she explained, her voice carrying a hint of something familiar that Ryan couldn't place. I'm not interested in the glamour of working for a billionaire. I'm interested in doing meaningful work. Ryan found himself paying closer attention. Her responses were thoughtful, demonstrating both competence and character. She spoke about her experience managing complex projects, her ability to handle confidential information, and her commitment to excellence. When she mentioned growing up in Connecticut, something stirred in Ryan's memory, but he pushed it aside, focusing on the interview. He noticed her simple but elegant attire, her direct gaze, and the way she carried herself with quiet confidence. The moment of recognition came when she handed him her driver's license for the background check. Hannah Morrison. The name hit him like a physical force, though he maintained his composed exterior. Memories he'd locked away for years threatened to surface. Summer afternoons, shared laughter, innocent promises. Hannah showed no sign of recognizing him, or if she did, she hid it well. She maintained her professional demeanor, discussing salary expectations and start dates as if they were perfect strangers. Ryan found himself studying her features, searching for traces of the girl he once knew in this accomplished woman before him. "When can you start?" he heard himself ask, his voice steadier than he felt. "Tomorrow, if needed," she replied, her expression revealing nothing. As she left his office, Ryan remained at his desk, trying to process what had just happened. The girl who had once meant everything to him, who had disappeared from his life so completely, was now going to be working alongside him daily. The implications of this coincidence, if it was a coincidence, threatened to upend the carefully ordered world he'd built. His phone buzzed with messages about the evening's gala, but Ryan barely noticed. His mind was caught between past and present, between the Hannah he'd known and the woman who'd just walked out of his office. For the first time in years, his perfectly controlled life felt suddenly, dangerously uncertain. Hannah's first week transformed the atmosphere of Ryan's penthouse. Where silence once dominated, efficient activity now flowed. She arrived each morning at 7 a.m. sharp, bringing a subtle energy that seemed to revitalize the space. Ryan found himself looking forward to their morning briefings, though he maintained strict professional boundaries. Her organization skills impressed him immediately. Within days, she had streamlined his schedule, removing unnecessary meetings and creating time blocks that actually made sense. She handled his business contacts with remarkable diplomacy, and even his most demanding clients seemed pleased with her approach. Ryan noticed small changes in his routine. His usual catered lunches from exclusive restaurants were replaced with more practical options. When he questioned this, Hannah explained the efficiency of having simpler, healthier meals delivered from local businesses. Her practical reasoning made sense, though he suspected there was more to her choices. One particularly busy Tuesday, Hannah suggested they review his upcoming commitments over lunch. Instead of ordering in, she recommended a small deli 2 blocks away. Ryan's initial hesitation disappeared when she pointed out it would give them uninterrupted time to talk, away from phones and interruptions. The deli was nothing like his usual establishments. No white tablecloths, no sommelier, just simple wooden tables and the smell of fresh-baked bread. Hannah navigated the menu with familiarity, recommending their pastrami sandwich. Ryan found himself following her lead, surprised by his own comfort in this modest setting. "This place reminds me of somewhere I used to go," he said, then stopped himself, unsure if he should reference their shared past. Hannah paused briefly before responding. Good food doesn't always need fancy presentation. Her tone remained professional, but something in her eyes softened. As they discussed his upcoming board meeting, Ryan found himself distracted by small details. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear, her focused expression as she took notes, mannerisms that hadn't changed since childhood. The sandwich, he had to admit, was better than anything he'd eaten in recent memory. Their conversation shifted when Hannah's phone buzzed. Her expression tightened as she checked the message. "I'm sorry, I need to make a quick call. It's about my brothers," she explained, stepping outside. When she returned, Ryan noticed the worry lines around her eyes. "Everything okay?" he asked, surprising himself with his concern. Hannah hesitated before answering. "My youngest brother needs new textbooks for college. The scholarship doesn't cover everything." She spoke matter-of-factly, but Ryan could sense the weight of responsibility in her voice. "You're supporting them through school?" he asked, remembering suddenly that Hannah had always talked about having a big family. "Someone has to," she replied, then quickly redirected the conversation to his schedule. But Ryan had seen enough. The contrast between his world of excess and her world of careful budgeting and responsibility was stark. As they walked back to the office, Ryan found himself hyper-aware of their differences. Hannah's clothes, while professional, were clearly chosen for durability rather than designer labels. Her lunch choice wasn't just about efficiency. It was about practicality and budget. In his office later that day, Ryan caught himself watching Hannah through the glass partition as she efficiently managed his affairs. She was different from everyone else in his world. Genuine, unpretentious, focused on what mattered rather than what impressed. The attraction he felt wasn't just about their shared past or her beauty. It was about who she was now. The day ended with Hannah presenting him with a reorganized contact list and an optimized schedule for the next month. As she explained her systems, Ryan realized he'd been more engaged and productive today than he had been in months. Hannah's presence was changing things, changing him, in ways he hadn't expected and wasn't sure he was ready to acknowledge. The weekend street fair wasn't Ryan's typical scene, but Hannah had convinced him it was important to understand the local community where his company was expanding. The sun was bright, the air filled with the scent of food vendors and the sound of live music. Ryan felt oddly exposed without his usual business attire, dressed in jeans and a simple button-down shirt at Hannah's suggestion. "You can't properly experience a street fair in a three-piece suit," she had said, and he had to admit she was right. Walking among the crowds, nobody recognized him as the billionaire CEO. It was surprisingly refreshing. Hannah navigated the fair with ease, stopping at various stalls, explaining the stories behind local artisans. She knew many vendors by name, greeting them warmly. Ryan watched as she chatted with an elderly woman selling homemade jam, struck by how naturally Hannah moved between his world of corporate boardrooms and this vibrant, everyday scene. "Try this," she said, offering him a piece of fresh empanada from a food truck. The flavor was incredible, nothing like the carefully plated meals he was used to. Hannah smiled at his surprised expression. Sometimes the best things in life aren't found in five-star restaurants. As they walked, Ryan noticed details about Hannah he hadn't allowed himself to see before. The way her eyes crinkled when she laughed, her genuine interest in people's stories, the slight accent that emerged when she was excited. All remnants of the girl he'd known, now part of this accomplished woman. Later that evening, they ended up on his penthouse terrace. The city lights sparkled below, but the atmosphere felt different from his usual business entertaining. Hannah sat in one of the lounge chairs, looking out at the view. "I never thought I'd be sitting here," she said quietly. "Life takes strange turns. You want to talk about it?" Ryan asked, sensing she had more to say. Hannah was quiet for a moment. "After you left Connecticut, things got tough. Dad lost his job at the factory, Mom got sick. I was the oldest, so I had to step up, started working after school, then put college on hold to help with the bills." Ryan listened, feeling a mix of guilt and admiration. While he'd been attending private schools and building his empire, Hannah had been fighting to keep her family afloat. "I did eventually finish college, night classes, weekend courses, whatever I could manage while working full-time. My brothers were young. They needed stability. Someone had to make sure they had opportunities." "That must have been difficult," Ryan said, thinking of his own privileged path. "It was what needed to be done," Hannah replied simply. "But it taught me what really matters. Success isn't just about money or status. It's about the impact you have on others." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken words. Ryan felt the weight of their different paths, the years that had separated them. He thought about their childhood friendship, the simple happiness they'd shared before social class, and family expectations had torn them apart. "Hannah," he started, feeling compelled to explain his own past. "About what happened when I left. It was a long time ago," she interrupted, but her voice held a note of tension. "No, Ine, I had to tell you this," Ryan insisted. "My father," a sudden call from his security team interrupted them. An urgent business matter required his attention. As he dealt with the situation, Ryan could feel the moments slipping away. Hannah excused herself, citing the late hour, leaving him with the weight of unspoken explanations. Watching her leave, Ryan realized how much he wanted to tell her everything. About his father's threats, about the arranged move to boarding school, about how leaving her had been the first of many compromises he'd made to meet his family's expectations. But the words remained unsaid, trapped behind years of carefully constructed walls. The city continued to buzz below, but Ryan's thoughts were far away, back in a small Connecticut town where two kids from different worlds had once believed that nothing could come between them. Now, years later, those same differences loomed larger than ever, complicated by adult responsibilities and unspoken truths. The Williams family mansion in the Hamptons buzzed with wedding preparations. Sarah, Ryan's younger sister, stood in the grand foyer, surrounded by wedding planners and decorators, her face a mask of composed enthusiasm that Ryan saw right through. "Everything has to be perfect," their mother Elizabeth repeated, directing staff with military precision. "The Ashworths are one of the most prominent families on the East Coast. This wedding will merge two great dynasties." Ryan watched his sister's shoulders tense at their mother's words. Sarah had always been the family pleaser, following their parents' expectations without question. Her engagement to Thomas Ashworth III had been celebrated as a perfect match in their social circle. But Ryan noticed how his sister's smile never quite reached her eyes anymore. During a brief moment alone in the library, Sarah turned to Ryan. "How do you do it?" she asked, fidgeting with her diamond engagement ring. "How do you handle all the pressure?" "What do you mean?" Ryan kept his tone neutral, though he sensed where this was heading. "You've changed lately. You seem lighter somehow, more like the brother I remember from when we were kids." Sarah studied him carefully. "It's that new assistant of yours, isn't it, Hannah?" Ryan maintained his poker face, but Sarah had always been able to read him. "This isn't about Hannah. This is about your wedding." "Don't deflect," Sarah pressed. "I've seen how you are around her. You smile more. You actually laughed at last week's family dinner. You never laugh at those anymore." The family dinner she referenced had been different. Hannah had been there, officially to coordinate some business matters, but her presence had changed the entire dynamic. She'd handled their mother's subtle condescension with grace, and their father's probing questions about her background with dignified honesty. "Thomas wants to move to London after the wedding," Sarah suddenly announced. "He says it's for business, but I think he just wants to separate me from my photography career here." Ryan frowned. Sarah's photography had been gaining recognition in New York galleries, though their parents dismissed it as a hobby. "What do you want to do?" "What do you want?" Sarah laughed bitterly. "When has that ever mattered? Mother says this marriage will secure our family's social position for another generation. Father says it's good for business. The Ashworths have connections we need." During dinner that evening, Ryan watched as Sarah played her part perfectly, the dutiful daughter, the excited bride-to-be. But he caught her staring at her phone under the table, probably looking at messages from Jack, her photographer mentor, whom their parents disapproved of. "Ryan, dear," their mother's voice cut through his thoughts. "When are you going to follow your sister's example? The Preston's daughter is recently divorced. She'd be perfect for you." "I'm focused on the company right now, Mother," Ryan replied automatically. "Lee, you can't keep using work as an excuse," his father chimed in. "A man in your position needs a suitable wife, someone who understands our world." Ryan thought of Hannah, of their conversation on his terrace, of her strength and authenticity. "And what exactly is our world, Father?" A tense silence fell over the table. Sarah shot him a surprised look. He never questioned their father. "Our world," their father said slowly, "is one of responsibility to family legacy and social position. Something you do well to remember." Later, as Ryan prepared to leave, Sarah caught his arm. "Be happy, Ryan," she whispered. "Don't let them define your life like they've defined mine." Driving back to the city, Ryan thought about Sarah's words, about Hannah, about the carefully constructed walls of their social class. His phone buzzed with a message from Hannah about tomorrow's schedule, and he felt that now familiar warmth in his chest. He realized that Sarah was right. He had changed. Hannah's presence in his life was making him question everything he'd accepted as unchangeable. But with that awareness came fear. He'd once lost Hannah to family expectations. Could he risk defying those expectations now, when the stakes were even higher? The envelope sat on Hannah's desk like a ticking bomb. Ryan noticed it immediately when he entered the office that morning. Crisp, official letterhead from Global Aid Initiative, one of the world's largest humanitarian organizations. Hannah's expression was unreadable as she handed him his morning coffee. "I received an offer," she said directly, her voice steady but quiet. "They want me to head their Southeast Asian education program. It's everything I've ever wanted to do." Ryan felt his chest tighten. "Where would you be based?" "Singapore. Initially for 2 years, with potential extension." Hannah's fingers twisted together, a nervous habit he remembered from their childhood. They need an answer within the week. The news hit Ryan harder than he expected. He'd grown dependent on Hannah's presence, not just professionally, but personally. The thought of her leaving created a hollow feeling he wasn't prepared for. "When did you apply?" he asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. 3 months ago, before..." She paused, leaving the words "before us" unspoken. "Before I started working here." Throughout the day, Ryan found himself watching Hannah more intently than usual. She worked with her typical efficiency, but there was a new tension in her shoulders. During their afternoon meeting, she outlined the transition plan she'd already prepared, ever professional. "I haven't accepted yet," she said softly as she finished her presentation. "But you want to," Ryan replied, not a question but a statement. "Ryan." Hannah's professional facade cracked slightly. "We need to talk about what's happening between us." They moved to the privacy of the terrace, the city sprawling below them as usual, but now it felt like it was pulling them in different directions. "I grew up watching my parents struggle," Hannah began. "My mother's dreams got smaller every year until they disappeared completely. I promised myself I would never let that happen to me. Is that what you think would happen if you stayed?" Ryan asked, hurt creeping into his voice. "Look at us, Ryan. Look at this." She gestured to the penthouse, the view, the life he lived. "We're from different worlds. Your family would never accept me. Society would never accept us. I'd always be the girl from the wrong side of the tracks who somehow trapped the billionaire." You don't know that, Ryan protested, but Hannah's bitter laugh cut him off. I saw how your mother looked at me at that dinner. I heard the whispers at your sister's engagement party. This isn't a fairy tale, Ryan. Real life doesn't work that way. So you're running away? The words came out harsher than he intended. I'm being realistic, Hannah countered. This job, it's a chance to make a real difference, to help children who deserve better opportunities, just like my brothers did. Ryan stepped closer to her. And what about us? Is there even in US, Ryan? Hannah's voice trembled slightly. We've been dancing around this for weeks. You can't even acknowledge what's happening between us to your family. The truth of her words stung. He had kept their growing connection hidden, worried about complications, about his family's reaction, about the business implications. I care about you, he said finally. Sometimes caring isn't enough. Hannah's eyes glistened. Sometimes we have to choose between what we want and what we need. The silence that followed was deafening. Below them, New York continued its endless rhythm, oblivious to the drama unfolding above. Ryan wanted to tell her she was wrong, that they could make it work, that he would stand up to his family, to society, to anyone who questioned them. But the words stuck in his throat, years of conditioning holding them back. I need time to think, Hannah said finally, gathering herself. And you need to decide what you really want, Ryan. Not what your family wants, not what society expects. What you want. She left him standing on the terrace. The Singapore offer letter, a physical reminder of the distance that could soon separate them. Ryan stared at the city lights, feeling more lost than he had in years. The carefully ordered world he'd built was crumbling, and he wasn't sure if he should try to save it or let it fall. The following days in the office felt like walking on broken glass. Ryan and Hannah maintained their professional relationship, but the underlying tension was palpable. Every interaction was carefully measured, every word chosen with deliberate precision. During a particularly tense board meeting, Ryan found himself distracted by Hannah's absence. She had taken a personal day, presumably to consider the Singapore offer. The board members droned on about quarterly projections, but his mind kept wandering to their last conversation. Ryan, his father's sharp voice, cut through his thoughts. Are you even listening? This merger is crucial for our family's interests. Family interests. The phrase echoed in his head, a constant refrain throughout his life. Looking around the boardroom, Ryan suddenly saw it clearly. The golden handcuffs that had always bound him, disguised as privilege and responsibility. After the meeting, he sat alone in his office, staring at a photo on his desk. It showed him at his company's launch, his father's hand on his shoulder, both smiling for the cameras. But Ryan remembered that day differently. Remembered his father's whispered warnings about maintaining the family's reputation, about the responsibilities that came with their name. His phone buzzed, a message from Hannah. I've made my decision. Can we talk? The meeting happened in his office as the sun was setting. Hannah looked composed, but Ryan noticed she had worn the simple silver necklace she always touched when nervous. I'm taking the position, she said without preamble. Even though he had expected it, the words hit him like a physical blow. Hannah, wait. Please let me finish, she interrupted. I've drafted a complete transition plan. I'll stay for 2 weeks to train my replacement. Everything will be organized before I leave. This isn't about the job, Ryan said, standing up. This is about us. Is it? Hannah's voice cracked slightly. Because from where I stand, there isn't an US. There's you in your world, and me in mine, and we've been pretending the gap between them isn't there. I can change things, Ryan insisted, but even to his ears, the words sounded hollow. Can you? Hannah challenged. Are you ready to tell your family about us? To face the society pages calling me a gold digger? To watch your father's disapproval and your mother's thinly veiled insults? Ryan's silence was answer enough. That's what I though. Hannah said softly. You're not ready to fight for us, Ryan. And I'm not willing to hide in the shadows, pretending to be something I'm not. The discussion turned into an argument, their voices rising with emotions too long suppressed. You're running away again, Ryan accused. Just like before. Hannah's laugh was bitter. Is that what you think happened before? Maybe you should ask your father about that. Before he could respond, she turned and walked out, leaving him with questions he wasn't sure he wanted answered. Later that night, alone in his penthouse. Ryan poured himself a drink and watched the city lights blur below. The emptiness of his luxury apartment mocked him. Every surface gleamed with expensive perfection, but none of it meant anything without Hannah's presence to make it feel like home. He thought about calling her, about rushing to her apartment and declaring that he would change everything for her. But the truth was, Hannah was right. He wasn't ready to face the consequences of choosing her over his family's expectations. The weight of his name, his position, his responsibilities, they all held him back like invisible chains. His phone buzzed again, his father, demanding his presence at tomorrow's charity gala. Another obligation, another performance of the perfect son. Ryan stared at the message, feeling trapped in a life he had never really chosen for himself. The city continued its endless dance below, indifferent to his turmoil. Somewhere out there, Hannah was probably preparing for her new life, one that would take her thousands of miles away from him. And here he sat, in his golden cage, too afraid to break free. The rain pounded against Ryan's office windows as he stared at Hannah's resignation letter. Her last day was tomorrow, and her flight to Singapore was scheduled for the following morning. The clock on his desk seemed to mock him, counting down the minutes until he lost her again. Something his sister Sarah had said kept echoing in his mind. Sometimes the biggest regrets come from the chances we were too afraid to take. She had called off her wedding to Thomas Ashworth III that morning, causing a scandal in their social circles. But Ryan had never seen her smile so genuinely. Standing up abruptly, Ryan grabbed his coat. His security team scrambled to follow as he headed for the elevator. "Sir, you have the Thompson meeting in 20 minutes, his temporary assistant called after him. "Cancel everything," he replied, already dialing his driver. Then he paused, looking at the sleek company car waiting outside. No, this wasn't about William Industries CEO today. This was about Ryan, just Ryan. He dismissed his security and driver, stepping out into the rain. The subway station felt foreign. He couldn't remember the last time he'd taken public transportation. Checking his phone, he found Hannah's address in the employee records. His hands shook as he typed out a message. "Don't leave. Not yet. Please." The response came quickly. "Ryan, we've been through this." He boarded the train, ignoring the curious looks from other passengers at his expensive suit. His mind raced with all the things he needed to say, all the truths he'd kept hidden. When he reached her neighborhood in Queens, the rain had become a downpour. He found her apartment building, a modest walk-up that reminded him how different their worlds were. But for the first time, that difference didn't feel like a barrier. It felt like proof of Hannah's strength, her authenticity. She wasn't home. Her neighbor, an elderly woman, recognized him from the papers. "Hannah's at the storage unit, clearing out her things before the move," she offered, giving him directions to the facility. The storage facility was closing when he arrived, soaked to the skin. Hannah stood under the awning, organizing boxes. She froze when she saw him. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the rain. "I know why you left Con. Necticut," Ryan said, water dripping from his hair. "My father threatened your family's livelihood. He told you that if you didn't end things with me, he'd make sure your father never worked in the state again." Hannah's sharp intake of breath confirmed what he'd discovered in his father's old files the night before. "You didn't leave me," he continued, stepping closer. "You sacrificed what we had to protect your family. And now you're doing it again, running to Singapore because you think you don't belong in my world." "Ryan, no, let me finish. I've spent my entire life living up to expectations, being the perfect son, the perfect CEO, maintaining the perfect image. But none of it means anything without you. I don't want perfect. I want real. I want you." The rain continued to fall between them, but neither moved. "Your family," Hannah started. "Sarah called off her wedding this morning," Ryan interrupted. "She's moving to Paris to pursue photography. She taught me something important. We can't live our lives for other people, even family." "It's not that simple," Hannah protested, but he could see her resolve wavering. "It is that simple. I love you, Hannah. I loved you when we were kids, and I love you now. Everything else, the money, the status, the family name, it's all just noise." Before Hannah could respond, Ryan's phone rang. The screen showed his sister's name, her timing as terrible as ever. Sarah's panicked voice cut through the rain-soaked moment. Ryan, everything's falling apart. The press, they're saying Thomas was involved in insider trading. Dad knew about it. There are federal investigators at the house. Ryan's world tilted. He met Hannah's concerned gaze as he listened to his sister's frantic explanation. The Ashworth scandal wasn't just about a canceled society wedding anymore. It was about fraud, corruption, and his family's possible involvement. They're saying Dad used information from Thomas to make trades, Sarah continued, her voice breaking. The FBI is seizing documents. Mom's having a breakdown. I don't know what to do. Hannah stepped closer, close enough to hear Sarah's words. Without hesitation, she took Ryan's free hand, squeezing it supportively. Where are you? Ryan asked Sarah. At the Hampton house. Mom's locked herself in the study, and Dad's lawyers are telling him not to talk to anyone, even family. Ryan, I'm scared. I'm coming, he said, then looked at Hannah, torn between his sister's crisis and this crucial moment with her. Hannah made the decision for him. I'll drive, she said firmly, pulling out her car keys. Your sister needs you. The drive to the Hamptons was tense. Rain pelted Hannah's modest sedan as she navigated through traffic. Ryan made calls, trying to understand the extent of the scandal. According to his contacts, Thomas Ashworth had been running a sophisticated insider trading scheme for years. The evidence suggested William Williams, Ryan's father, had been a willing participant. This could destroy everything, Ryan said quietly. The company, our reputation, the company is more than just your father, Hannah replied, her eyes on the road. You've built something real there, Ryan. Something honest. They arrived at the Hampton estate to find it surrounded by news vans. Hannah smoothly turned down a service road she remembered from catering jobs in college, avoiding the media circus. Sarah met them at the kitchen entrance, her eyes red from crying. She stopped short when she saw Hannah, then surprised them both by hugging her. Thank God you're here, Sarah said to them both. Dad's barricaded himself in his office with his lawyers, and Mom's having hysterics about the social fallout. The FBI wants to interview everyone who might have known about the trading. Ryan straightened his shoulders, slipping into crisis management mode. First, we need to separate the company from Dad's personal actions. Hannah, can you? I'll start drafting a press stat. It meant, she finished his thought. We'll need to emphasize the company's compliance procedures and your commitment to transparency. For the next few hours, they worked as a team. Hannah coordinated with the PR team, while Ryan dealt with the board members, and Sarah managed their mother. Her practical approach and clear thinking helped cut through the chaos. Why are you helping us? Sarah asked Hannah during a quiet moment. After everything our family did to you. Because it's the right thing to do, Hannah replied simply. And because despite everything, I care about what happens to you and Ryan. Ryan overheard their conversation as he returned from another tense phone call. His father's actions had placed everything at risk, but watching Hannah work tirelessly to help his family, the same family that had once torn them apart, made something clear to him. She wasn't just his past or his present. She was the future he wanted, regardless of what came next. As night fell, the immediate crisis stabilized. The company's stock had taken a hit, but Ryan's quick response had prevented a complete freefall. His father would face the consequences of his actions, but the company might survive. Back in Ryan's home office, the full scope of the scandal began to emerge. Financial records spread across his desk revealed a pattern stretching back years. His father's involvement wasn't just peripheral. He had been actively participating in the scheme, using Thomas Ashworth's position to manipulate markets for personal gain. Look at these dates, Hannah said, pointing to a series of transactions. The donations to Global Aid Initiative. They were using charitable contributions to hide the money trail. Her voice caught. The Singapore position I was offered, it might be connected to all this. Ryan felt the weight of realization settle over him. They were trying to get you out of the way. Someone must have noticed we were getting closer. Sarah, who had been quietly reviewing documents, spoke up. Thomas told me once that Dad suggested hiring Hannah. Said it would be strategic. I didn't understand what he meant then. The pieces were falling into place. Ryan's father hadn't just tried to separate them in their youth. He was still manipulating their lives, using Hannah's dedication to charitable work against her. All these years, Ryan said, his voice tight with anger. He's been controlling everything. Our lives, our choices, even our feelings. Hannah sat down heavily, her professional composure cracking. The children who would have benefited from those programs, they were just pawns in this scheme. Sarah moved to the window, watching the media van still camped outside the building. We were all pawns. My wedding, Ryan's company, Hannah's career. Dad saw us all as pieces to move around for his benefit. Ryan stood suddenly, his decision crystallizing. No more. We end this now. He picked up his phone, dialing the lead FBI investigator's number. Hannah and Sarah watched as he spoke, his voice steady. I have information about William Williams' involvement in the Ashworth trading scheme. I'll cooperate fully with your investigation. After hanging up, he turned to Hannah. I understand if this changes things. My family name is about to become toxic. The company will take a hit. Everything I have might be at risk. Hannah stood, moving to face him. Do you really think I care about any of that? The Ryan I fell in love with isn't defined by his bank account or his family name. Sarah cleared her throat. I should check on Mom. She paused at the door. Hannah, thank you for helping us see the truth. Left alone, Ryan and Hannah stood in the growing darkness of the office. The city lights blinked on outside, creating a soft glow around them. The Singapore position, Hannah said quietly. I was so proud when I got it. Now I know it was just another manipulation. Ryan took her hand. You got it because you're brilliant at what you do. They might have had ulterior motives, but your qualifications are real. What happens now? She asked. Now we stop letting others write our story. Ryan's voice was firm. My father's actions will have consequences, but there is consequences to bear. The company can be rebuilt, this time on honest foundations. Hannah's phone buzzed, the Global Aid Initiative requesting her final decision about Singapore. She stared at the message, then slowly put the phone down without responding. I think, she said carefully, there's important work to be done right here. The weight of the scandal still loomed, but as they stood together in that office, something had shifted. The barriers between their worlds hadn't disappeared, but they no longer seemed insurmountable. 2 weeks after the scandal broke, Ryan stood in his father's old office, now stripped of personal belongings. The FBI investigation was ongoing, but William Williams had already agreed to step down from all company positions. The morning papers carried headlines about his expected indictment. Ryan had spent the night drafting a new company mission statement with Hannah. Between corporate crisis management and family drama, they had barely slept, yet something felt different, clearer, more purposeful. Mr. Williams, his assistant interrupted, your father is here. William Williams entered the office, looking older than Ryan had ever seen him. Gone was the commanding presence that had dominated Ryan's life for so long. You're destroying everything I built, his father said without preamble. No, Ryan replied calmly. I'm rebuilding what you destroyed. There's a difference. All of this because of that girl, Hannah? William's voice carried a familiar note of contempt. I try to protect you from making a mistake. The only mistake, Ryan said, standing, was letting you convince me that love was less important than social status. That integrity could be sacrificed for profit. Their confrontation was interrupted by Hannah entering with urgent documents. She paused, seeing William, but held her ground. Speaking of mistakes, William said coldly. Did you know, son, that your precious Hannah discovered irregularities in our charitable donations months ago? She could have exposed everything then. I know, Ryan replied. She told me herself. She also told me how you threatened to ruin her career if she came forward. Hannah stepped forward. I didn't stay quiet because of your threats, Mr. Williams. I stayed quiet to gather evidence, to make sure when the truth came out, it would be complete. William laughed bitterly. And now, will exposing our family's shame make you happy? No, Hannah said softly. What makes me happy is seeing your son finally free to be himself. After William left, Ryan and Hannah faced the next challenge. The press had gotten wind of their relationship, spinning wild theories about Hannah's role in exposing the scandal. They're calling me a corporate spy, Hannah said, showing Ryan the latest tabloid headline. Let them talk, Ryan replied. The truth will come out. That evening, They met Sarah at a small restaurant, the same deli where they'd had lunch months ago. She brought news about their mother, who had checked herself into a wellness retreat. She's actually doing better away from all the society pressure, Sarah reported. Maybe this whole mess is forcing us all to reevaluate what matters. As they shared a simple meal, Ryan realized something profound. His world hadn't ended when the scandal broke. It had transformed. The company was smaller, but more ethical. His social circle had shrunk, but grown more genuine. "I have something for you," he told Hannah, pulling out a small box. Inside wasn't a ring. It wasn't time for that yet, but a key. "It's to a new office," he explained. "We're launching a legitimate charitable foundation. Real programs, real help for people who need it. I want you to run it." I stared at the key, tears in her eyes. "You remember what I said about making a difference?" "I remember everything about you," Ryan replied, "including how you always wanted to help others. This foundation will do that the right way." Sarah raised her glass. "To new beginnings?" "To truth," Hannah added. "To love," Ryan finished, taking Hannah's hand. Outside, the city hummed with its usual energy, but everything felt different. The walls between their worlds hadn't come down entirely. They had simply learned to build bridges instead. Their love story wasn't perfect, but it was real, tested by fire, and stronger for it. As they left the restaurant, walking hand in hand through the streets where their second chance had begun, both Ryan and Hannah knew that while the past couldn't be changed, the future was theirs to write together.